A large alabaster-based kerosene lamp is steered into the gloaming. Gently it floats and comes down. The hand of memory, now in a footman's white glove, places it in the center of a round table. The flame is nicely adjusted, and a rosy silk-flounced lampshade with inset glimpses of rococo winter sports crowns the readjusted cotton wool of Casimir's ear light, revealed a warm, bright, stylish Russian Empire drawing-room in a snow-muffled house, soon to be termed La Chateau, built by my mother's grandmother, who, being afraid of fires, held the staircase fashioned of iron, so that when the house did get burned to the ground sometime after the Soviet Revolution, those fine-wrought steps, with the sky shining through their open-work risers, remained standing all alone but still leading up. Some more about that drawing-room, please. The gleaming white moldings of the furniture, the embroidered roses of its upholstery, the white piano, the oval mirror, hanging on taut cords, its pure brow inclined, it strives to retain for the falling furniture, and a slope of bright floor that keeps slipping from its embrace. The chandelier pendants, these emit a delicate tinkling. Things are being moved in the upstairs room, where Mademoiselle will dwell. Colored pencils, their detailed spectrum advertised on the box but never completely represented by those inside. We are sitting at a round table, my brother and I and Miss Robinson, who now and then looks at her watch. Roads must be dreadful with all that snow, and anyway, many professional hardships lie in wait for the vague French person who will replace her. Now the colored pencils in action. Green one, by a mere whirl of the wrist, could be made to produce a ruffled tree, or the eddy left by a submerged crocodile. The blue one, through a simple line across the page, and the horizon of all seas was there. A nondescript blunt one kept getting into one's way. The brown one was always broken, and so was the red, but sometimes, just after it had snapped, one could still make it serve by holding it so that the loose tip was propped, none too securely, by a jutting splinter. The little purple fellow, a special favorite of mine, had got worn down so short as to become scarcely manageable. The white one alone, that lanky albino among pencils, kept its original length, or at least did so, until I discovered that, far from being a fraud, leaving no mark on the page, it was the ideal implement, since I could imagine whatever I wished while I scrawled. Alas, these pencil tubes have been distributed among the characters in my books to keep a fictitious children busy. They are not quite my own now, somewhere in the apartment house of the chapter. In the hired room of a paragraph, I have also placed that tilted mirror and the lamp, and the chandelier drops. Few things are left, many have been squandered. Here I have given away box 1, son and husband of Lulu, the housekeeper's pet. That old brown dachshund fast asleep on the sofa? No, I think he is still mine. His grizzled muzzle, with the wart at the puckered corner of the mouth, is tucked into the curve of his hock, and from time to time a deep sigh distends his ribs. He is so old, and his sleep is so thickly padded with dreams about chewable slippers and a few last smells that he does not stir when faint bells jingle outside. Then a pneumatic door heaves and clangs in the vestibule. She has come after all. I had so hoped she would not. Another dog, the sweet-tempered sire of a ferocious family, a great day not allowed in the house, played a pleasant part in the adventure that took place on the following days, if not the very day after. It so happened that my brother and I were completely in charge of the newcomer. As I reconstituted now, my mother had probably gone with her maid, a young Trini, to St. Petersburg, a distance of some 50 miles, where my father was deeply involved in the grave political events of the winter. She was pregnant and very nervous. Miss Robinson, instead of staying to break in Mademoiselle, had gone too, back to that ambassador's family about which we had learned from her about as much as they would about us. In order to prove that this was no way of treating us, I had immediately formed the project of repeating the exciting performance of a year before, when we escaped from poor Miss Hunt in Wiesbaden. This time the countryside all around was a wilderness of snow, and it was hard to imagine what exactly could have been the goal of the journey I planned. We had just returned from our first afternoon walk with Mademoiselle, and I was seething with frustration and hatred. With a little prompting, I had meek Sergei share some of my anger. To keep up with the unfamiliar tongue, all we knew in the way of French were a few household phrases, and on top of it, to be crossed in all our fond habits was more than one could bear. The bon promenade she had promised us had turned out to be a tedious stroll near the house, where the snow had been cleared and the icy ground sprinkled with sand. She had us wear things we never used to wear, even on the frostiest day, horrible gaiters and hoods that hampered our every movement. She had restrained us when I included Sergei to explore the creamy, smooth swellings of snow that had been the flower beds in the summer. She had not allowed us to walk under the organ pipe-like system of huge icicles that hung from the caves and gloriously burned in the low sun, and she had rejected as ignoble as one of my favorite pastimes devised by Miss Robinson, lying prone on a little plush sledge, with a bit of rope tied to its front and a hand in leathern mitten pulling me along a snow-covered path under white trees, and Sergei not lying but sitting on a second sledge upholstered in red plush attached to the rear of my blue one, and the heels of 2 felt boots right in front of my face, walking quite fast with toes slightly turned in, now this, now that, soul skidding on a raw patch of ice. The hand and the feet belonged to Dmitri, our oldest and shortest gardener, and the path was some avenue of oaklings, which seems to have been the main artery of my infancy. I explained to my brother a wicked plan and persuaded him to accept it. As soon as we came back from that walk, we left Mademoiselle puffing on the steps of the vestibule and dashed indoors, giving her the impression that we were about to conceal ourselves in some remote room. Actually, we trotted on till we reached the other side of the house, and then, through a veranda, emerged into the garden again. The above-mentioned Great Dane was in the act of fussily adjusting himself to a nearby snowdrift, but while deciding which hind leg to lift, he noticed us and at once joined us at the joyful gallop. The 3 of us followed a fairly easy trail, and after plodding through the deeper snow, reached the road which led to the village. Meanwhile, the sun had set. Dusk came with uncanny suddenness. My brother declared he was cold and tired, but I urged him on and finally made him ride the dog. The only member of the party was still enjoying himself. We had gone more than 2 miles, and the moon was fantastically shiny, and my brother, in perfect silence, began to fall every now and then from his mount, when Dmitri, with a lantern, overtook us and led us home. "Giddy-yay, giddy-yay!" Mademoiselle was frantically shouting from the porch. I brushed past her without a word. My brother burst into tears and gave himself up. The Great Dane, whose name was Turka, returned to his interrupted affairs in connection with serviceable, informative snowdrifts around the house. In our childhood, we know a lot about hens, since they live and hover at the level of our stature. Mademoiselle's were unpleasant because of the froggy gloss on their tight skin besprinkled with brown ecchymotic spots. Before her time, no stranger had ever stroked my face. Mademoiselle, as soon as she came, had taken me completely aback by patting my cheek in sign of spontaneous affection. All her mannerisms came back to me when I think of her hands. Her trick of peeling rather than sharpening a pencil, the point held toward her stupendous and sterile bosom swathed in green wool, the way she had of inserting her little finger into her ear and vibrating it very rapidly, the ritual observed every time she gave me a fresh copybook, always panting a little, her mouth slightly open and emitting a quick succession, a series of asthmatic puffs. She would open the copybook to make a margin of it. That is, she would sharply imprint a vertical line with her thumbnail, fold in the edge of the page, press, release, smooth it out with the heel of her hand, which the book would be briskly twisted around and placed before me, ready for use. A new pen followed. She would moisten the glistening nib with susurrous lips before dipping into the baptismal ink font, then delighting in every limb of every limpid letter, especially so because the preceding copybook had ended in utter sloppiness. With exquisite care I would inscribe the word dictée while Mademoiselle hunted through her collection of spelling tests for a good hard passage.